Strange Stories from a Chinese Studio by Pu Song Ling. Translated by Herbert A. Giles. Examination for the post of guardian angel. My elder sister's husband's grandfather, named Sung Tao, was a graduate. One day, while lying down from indisposition, an official messenger arrived, bringing the usual notification in his hand and leading a horse with a white forehead to summon him to the examination for his master's degree. Mr. Sung here remarked that the grand examiner had not yet come, and asked why there should be this hurry. The messenger did not reply to this, but pressed so earnestly that at length Mr. Sung roused himself and getting upon the horse rode with him. The way seemed strange, and by they reached a city which resembled the capital of a prince. They then entered the prefect's yamen, the apartments of which were beautifully decorated, and there they found some 10 officials sitting at the upper end, all strangers to Mr. Sung, with the exception of one whom he recognized to be the god of war. In the veranda were 2 tables and 2 stools, and at the end of one of the former, a candidate was also seated, so Mr. Sung sat down alongside of him. On the table were writing materials for each, and suddenly down flew a piece of paper with a theme on it, consisting of the following 8 words: 1 man, 2 men, by intention, without intention. When Mr. Sung had finished his essay, he took it into the hall. It contained the following passage: Those who are virtuous by intention, though virtuous, shall not be rewarded. Those who are wicked without intention, though wicked, shall receive no punishment. The presiding deities praised this sentiment very much, and calling Mr. Sung to come forward, said to him, "A guardian angel is wanted in Honan. Go you and take up the appointment." Mr. Sung no sooner heard this than he bowed his head and wept, saying, "Unworthy though I am of the honor you have conferred upon me, I should not venture to decline it, but that my aged mother has reached her 7th decade, and there is no one now to take care of her. I pray you let me wait until she has fulfilled her destiny, when I will hold myself at your disposal." Thereupon one of the deities, who seemed to be the chief, gave instructions to search out his mother's term of life, and a long-bearded attendant forthwith brought in the Book of Fate. On turning it over, he declared that she still had 9 years to live, and then a consultation was held among the deities, in the middle of which the god of war said, "Very well, let Mr. Graduate Chung take his post, and be relieved in 9 years' time." Then, turning to Mr. Sung, he continued, "You ought to proceed without delay to your post, but as a reward for your filial piety, you are granted a furlough of 9 years. At the expiration of that time, you will receive another summons." He next addressed a few kind words to Mr. Chang, and the 2 candidates, having made their kowtow, went away together. Grasping Mr. Sung's hand, his companion, who gave Chang Chi of Changshan as his name and address, accompanied him beyond the city walls and gave him a stanza of poetry at parting. I cannot recollect it all, but in it occurred this couplet: "With wine and flowers we chase the hours in one eternal spring. No moon, no light to cheer the night, thyself that ray must bring." Mr. Sung here left him and rode on, and before very long reached his own home. Here he awaked as if from a dream, and found that he had been dead 3 days, when his mother, hearing a groan in the coffin, ran to it and helped him out. It was some time before he could speak, and then he at once inquired about Changshan, where, as it turned out, a graduate named Chang had died that very day. 9 years afterward, Mr. Sung's mother, in accordance with fate, passed from this life, and when the funeral obsequies were over, her son, having first purified himself, entered into his chamber and died also. Now his wife's family lived within the city near the western gate, and all of a sudden they beheld Mr. Sung, accompanied by numerous chariots and horses with carved trappings and red tasseled bits, enter into the hall, make an obeisance, and depart. They were very much disconcerted at this, not knowing that he had become a spirit, and rushed out into the village to make inquiries, when they heard he was already dead. Mr. Sung had an account of his adventure written by himself, but unfortunately, after the insurrection, it was not to be found. This is only an outline of the story. The Talking Pupils. At Chang'an there lived a scholar named Fang Tung, who, though by no means destitute of ability, was a very unprincipled rake, and in the habit of following and speaking to any woman he might chance to meet. The day before the spring festival of clear weather, he was strolling about outside the city when he saw a small carriage with red curtains and embroidered awning, followed by a crowd of waiting maids on horseback, one of whom was exceedingly pretty and riding on a small palfrey. Going closer to get a better view, Mr. Fang noticed that the carriage curtain was partly open, and inside he beheld a beautifully dressed girl of about 16, lovely beyond anything he had ever seen. Dazzled by the sight, he could not take his eyes off her, and now before, now behind, he followed the carriage for many a mile. By and by he heard the young lady call out to her maid, and when the latter came alongside, say to her, "Let down the screen for me. Who is this rude fellow that keeps on staring so?" The maid accordingly let down the screen, and looking angrily at Mr. Fang, said to him, "This is the bride of the 7th prince in the city of immortals, going home to see her parents, and no village girl that you should stare at her thus." Then taking a handful of dust, she threw it at him and blinded him. He rubbed his eyes and looked round, but the carriage and horses were gone. This frightened him, and he went off home, feeling very uncomfortable about the eyes. He sent for a doctor to examine his eyes, and on the pupils was found a small film, which had increased by next morning, the eyes watering incessantly all the time. The film went on growing, and in a few days was as thick as a cash. On the right pupil there came a kind of spiral, and as no medicine was of any avail, the sufferer gave himself up to grief and wished for death. He then bethought himself of repenting of his misdeeds, and hearing that the Kwangming Sutra could relieve misery, he got a copy and hired a man to teach it to him. At first it was very tedious work, but by degrees he became more composed, and spent every evening in a posture of devotion, telling his beads. At the end of a year he had arrived at a state of perfect calm, when one day he heard a small voice, about as loud as a fly's, calling out from his left eye, "It's horridly dark in here." To this he heard a reply from the right eye, saying, "Let us go out for a stroll and cheer ourselves up a bit." Then he felt a wriggling in his nose, which made it itch, just as if something was going out of each of the nostrils, and after a while he felt it again as if going the other way. Afterward he heard a voice from one eye say, "I hadn't seen the garden for a long time. The epidendrums are all withered and dead." Now Mr. Fang was very fond of these epidendrums, of which he had planted a great number, and had been accustomed to water them himself. But since the loss of his sight, he had never even alluded to them. Hearing, however, these words, he at once asked his wife why she had let the epidendrums die. She inquired how he knew they were dead, and when he told her, she went out to see, and found them actually withered away. They were both very much astonished at this, and his wife proceeded to conceal herself in the room. She then observed two tiny people, no bigger than a bean, come down from her husband's nose and run out of the door, where she lost sight of them. In a little while they came back and flew up to his face, like bees or beetles seeking their nests. This went on for some days, until Mr. Fang heard from the left eye, "This roundabout road is not at all convenient. It would be as well for us to make a door." To this the right eye answered, "My wall is too thick. It wouldn't be at all an easy job." "I'll try and open mine," said the left eye, "and then it will do for both of us." Whereupon Mr. Fang felt a pain in his left eye as if something was being split, and in a moment he found he could see the tables and chairs in the room. He was delighted at this, and told his wife, who examined his eye and discovered an opening in the film, through which she could see the black pupil shining out beneath, the eyeball itself looking like a cracked peppercorn. By next morning the film had disappeared, and when his eye was closely examined, it was observed to contain two pupils. The spiral on the right eye remained as before, and then they knew that the two pupils had taken up their abode in one eye. Further, although Mr. Fang was still blind of one eye, the sight of the other was better than that of the two together. From this time he was more careful of his behavior, and acquired in his part of the country the reputation of a virtuous man.